So this whole month of August has been a very interesting month. I don't know if you felt like I did, that it really went by very fast. I know people say that, but August really felt like it flew by. Well, every week in August here, on Sundays, we have been quoting and discussing an aspect of a different book. Right? So today it's from the 2013 New York Times bestseller, The One Thing, by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. And the basic message of today's book is extremely consistent with the basic message of Inside Out Healing, the book that we used last Sunday, when we got into the power of returning to the present moment. If you remember, if you were here, of living in the flow, of being aware that the incident or circumstance takes place in our life and is painful, but the suffering really occurs when we make up the story about it. So there is more suffering in the stories that we make up about incidents than the incidents themselves, unless, of course, we choose to learn from it, to embrace, if it's pain, to embrace the pain, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in life that is painful, and so we acknowledge that, but don't make up the story of, well, I can't go on anymore, or the story of an injury, well, I'll never be able to do this anymore. We can change the story to, yes, I can do all things. All things are possible in the divine, as was read this morning, so all things are possible in our lives when we make up that decision. And so the idea of this morning is the one thing, is that if you want less stress, strain, joy, more joy, and balance and abundance in your life, I think we all want that, yeah?
Yes.
You can achieve that by mastering the one thing. So you got to show up today to find out what that is. You've probably heard the term. I've never used it, but I've heard it. Go big or go home. Well, mastering the one thing suggests the opposite in specific content. Go small or go home, wherever home is. But by going small in this context, I mean to achieve big things, you need to narrow your focus in this moment to one thing. Whatever the one thing is that is in front of you. That's what we're going to be really getting focused on this morning. Because these are all, every month, every week, it's been a practical application of something we can use in our life. So to bring this idea truly within the context of our spiritual framework, I want to read from two great authors in New Thought, which is what this is, Religious Science New Thought. The first, Charles Fillmore, in his book, Talks on Truth. He writes this: God is and we are. Let us live in God's world, not a world to be tomorrow, next month, next year, or next century, but here and now. Divine, beautiful universe is all about us, only awaiting our acknowledgement of its presence. Let us know God and live. Live with love, joy, health, and peace, here and now. And then we have the founder of religious science, Ernest Holmes. He writes this in his book, 365 Days of Science of Mind. The only time to make use of the creative principle is now. The real secret to its practical application lies not in how much we know, but in the use of what we do know. The results, large or small, much or little, depend entirely on the degree of conscientious endeavor, enthusiasm, and joy, conviction, and faith that we can bring to bear on any particular situation. And that is in the here and now, right this moment. So in order to discern that one thing for us, we must ask a question, and not just any question. This is the key part of this. I'm loving this. Like I said last week, things show up in my life, and last week was, I thought was a pretty heady kind of talk, and everything showed up to point it out to me, so I had to use it. So this is also pointing out something very, very important, and that is, and something that I'm going through right now, and I'm sure a lot of you might be able to use this tool also. Okay? It's to be specific in the here and now about the question that we are asking. We must ask a specific question. In fact, we're going to call it the right question. You know, sometimes, most of the time, we just react to something, or we plan something, but asking the right question guides us in a direction that we will get the better outcome. It's always about the question. We've talked before about how the quality of our lives is often reflected in the quality of the questions that we ask. And here's a story of Thomas Edison, who was once asked if he had only 1 hour to solve a problem, what would he do? And his answer was that he would spend the first 55 minutes formulating the right question. Because with the right question, the solution was immediate. And you're familiar with the Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Right? We've all heard that. But have you ever stopped to think that if the single step is not the right step, that you could wind up 2,000 miles away from where you actually wanted to be? So asking the right question, taking the right step, helps you avoid a misstep in life. So what is the right question? Right? You may be asking. It's a focusing question. It's a really and here it is. And I'm going to give you this statement, and I'm going to take this statement apart. So if you're writing stuff down, you're going to hear this a lot, because I'm going to break it down. And hopefully this is going to all make sense to you as it made sense to me. So this is the statement. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? I'm going to say that again. What's the one thing that I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So it's pretty simple. I'm going to take it apart. So simple that its power can easily be overlooked if we don't really, if we don't examine it. Some of the most complex problems that we go through in life and situations can be avoided if we simply got centered and focused on these certain aspects of this one statement. So I'm going to explain it, unpack it, if you will, a little bit right now, and apply it to some specific areas that we might be able to use in our lives. Part one, what's the one thing? What's the one thing? This portion of the question causes you to focus on one thing, not many things. What's the one thing? So one thing, you're not going to think of, because our mind likes to overload us immediately. Here, 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 here. So this is specific. And so what's the one thing tells you the answer will be one thing. It forces you towards something more specific. It tells you right up front that although you may consider many options, you need to take this seriously. The first step. because you don't get 2, 3, 4, or more. You're allowed in this statement to pick one thing and only one thing. Page 194 of Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes writes this. I'm going to explain that later. In mental science, concentration means focusing the mental attention on some definite desire, thought, image, idea, or thing. Concentration of thought is not an effort. It's not an effort to compel, but the desire to permit. The stream of creative energy to take definite form. So, just be with that for a bit. Part 2, I can do. That's the second part of that statement. Within that phrase, I can do, is an embedded command directing you to take action that you will take, the correct action for you for that situation. You might want to be like me and tweak it up a little, like this is what I should do, this is what I could do, this is what I would do, but those choices all miss this very important point. There are many things that we should, would, could do, many things, but we never do them, right? If you're like me, anyway. Action you can do beats intention every time. Action you can do beats intention every time. Taking one step. What can I do? I'm going to give you some examples later on. What is one thing I can do? And these words from Holmes. Our mind should swing from inspiration to action, from concentration to accomplishment, from prayer to performance. Hear that? This would be a well-balanced existence, he says. Part 3 of our what's the one thing I can do is such that by doing it. The part of the question, put your consciousness on notice. Because this is all directing our subconscious, our consciousness, our conscious mind, all of it. It puts it on notice that there is a criteria your answer must meet. It's the bridge between just doing something, anything, and doing something for a specific purpose. And the place of infinite wisdom in you. Because within each and every one of us is this place of infinite wisdom. All that the divine is, we are. It's all within us. We have not been trained to actually recognize, realize, and utilize this. That was good. So the thing is to get in touch with it, because that infinite wisdom will resonate with what you are doing when you are doing it in the correct manner. And the correct manner is a manner that serves your highest good. That's what correct, I don't make up correct manner at all. But I know when something is or is not for my highest good. The ancient Greek mathematician, physicist, engineer, inventor, and astronomer Archimedes once said, "Give me a lever long enough and I could move the world." And that's exactly what this last part calls for. Everything else will be easier or unnecessary is the ultimate leverage test. It says that when you do this one thing, everything else you could do to accomplish your goal will now be either doable with less effort or completely unnecessary. This deceptively simple but exceedingly beautiful focusing question can direct you to the one thing in different areas of your life. You simply reframe it for the different areas, which we're going to do at the end of the talk here. And so this kind of triggered a memory for me about 15 years ago, when I'm sitting in my lovely home in Voorhees. Many of you have been there. Lovely home, great. But I thought, if I ever wanted to move, how could I move from this home? because my former husband had the basement filled from floor to ceiling with collectibles, so you know what that means. Lots of stuff. The garage, two-car garage, was completely full from the floor to the ceiling, literally, and wide, and the loft, and there was stuff everywhere. So I'm like, how would I ever move all this stuff? How would I pack this stuff up? I'm going to be here forever, right? There's no way. And this is a person that does not really want to throw a single thing out. So borderline, if not complete, hoarder, right there. So as life progresses, which it does, and I just simply leave my home at, you all know, at 3 o'clock in the morning, most of you know, just with my little teeny little suitcase, and never came back. It was very simple. I didn't have to pack anything up. And then this is the greatest part. I wish Fran were here, Fran Lefkowitz, because she was part of it. She was with me. I go, because now I got a big moving truck 7 months later to pick up stuff that I can actually take, but I'm not allowed in the house. So I sit outside on my beautiful chair, which is now in my new house, and I tell the movers, that box goes there, that box goes there. Everything was packed in a box and labeled. I could not have ever have done that myself. So by asking the specific question, what can I do? Well, obviously, I guess what I can do is take the smallest suitcase I own and just wheel it out the front door, and everything will be taken care of. You know, you'd think I was nuts. Oh, this teaching is crazy. Well, it was. And not only that, it was wrapped so beautifully. Everything was wrapped, everything was labeled. So it's beyond what we can ever imagine. We can't imagine the hows. I say that all the time. We can imagine the what, and then let the universe take care of the hows. Truly, truly, it does a much better job. So here are some different examples of focusing questions within the context of different areas of your life. For your spiritual life, you might say, what's the one thing that I can do to deepen my connection with Source, such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Just need one thing. What's the one thing I can do to build my faith, such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? I didn't have to sweat the small stuff about packing. It was unnecessary. Beautiful. For your physical health, you can ask this. What's the one thing I can do, one thing, to achieve my fitness goals, such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? These are different areas of our lives. What's the one thing I can do to relieve my stress, such that by doing everything else won't be easier or unnecessary? One thing that stresses, simply learning to breathe for a few minutes. That is a perfect example of, I said it last week, the breath to me is always the pause in life. It allows me to really get centered and take a look. Because when we're in it, we're like in the frying pan, we're in it. And we respond, we react, we jerk, but when we take that pause through the breath, all is possible. That's where the divine lives, in that breath, in that pause. For your key relationships. So what's the one thing I can do to improve my relationship with my spouse, my partner, a family member? What's the one thing, a co-worker, that by doing it, everything else is either easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing I can do to nurture my children, such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? It's that one. You ever find the adult children are more difficult than the little ones? That one. Okay, for your job, career. thought of that. What's the one thing I can do to further my career, such that by doing it, everything else will be much easier or unnecessary? There's always one thing. For your finances, that's always a good one. What's the one thing I can do to eliminate my credit card debt, such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing I can do to increase my net worth, such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Are you starting to get the picture? There's a theme here. It's the one thing is that first step. First step. And making the specific, correct question is the most important part of that step. And I said last week that the mandala of being was a powerful spiritual tool. I handed out little graphs to everybody. And we can get more powerful by using it, and also when we get in the habit of using this. And it's about really living in the now. There's a circle within the circle, and then different aspects of the future, the past, the you, the me, all of that was in there. And it was really to bring our focus into living in this now moment. So the same is true with these focusing questions. We can use these too. At first it may take some discipline to stop and think and remember, what were they? And when you have the discipline to actually ask it for 66 days, it will become a habit. And everyone's like, 66 days, they told me, they, you know, the great leader of wherever it is, 21 days. Well, I've tested it out and it does not work for me. What works is around 66 days. And then I got really excited because I heard from a new research out of England, the University College of London, where they asked the question, how long does it take to establish a new habit? And they set up this study around diet and exercise, always our favorite things, to see what that answer is. And they were looking for the moment when a new behavior becomes automatic. Then it's a new replaced or ingrained within us. The result of their study suggested that it takes an average of 66 days to acquire a new habit. It takes time to develop the right habit, so, you know, don't give up too soon. That's the point of that. It's like after 3 weeks, if it doesn't work well, I guess I'm not supposed to be doing that. Keep persevering, take those right actions. And so let's spend the next couple of minutes bringing the whole month. I want to do a synopsis of the whole month to a close, filling in maybe some loose ends, or it's the summer, people are not here every week. The first Sunday, we looked at a book called Thrive, another New York Times bestseller by media mogul Arianna Huffington. I think I got that right. And we looked at the 4 qualities of a successful life, of living a successful life. And they were well-being, particularly spiritual well-being. That's always going to be number 1. Wisdom, wonder, and giving. Always giving. It's like when people come here early in the morning and set up, they are giving. They're giving of their time, they're giving of their talents. They're helping us make this, try to transform this room into something where you can relax into. Beautiful flowers and the altar and the banners, everything. The second Sunday then we looked at, so giving's important, we looked at Charles Fillmore's book, Prosperity. Great book. If you have a couple, I ordered them, they're on the back. And we explored the 8 prosperity principles, including put God first in finances. Always. Always and always. And then last Sunday we added the new spiritual tool, the mandala of being. That comes out of Richard Moss's book, inside-out healing, which reminds us to stay present in the moment. And not only present in the moment, but be reminded that the power of God resides there. That this is where divine love resides, in this present moment. We can't say that enough. And let us be reminded again today of the focusing question that came from this talk. What's the one thing that I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? That is just put that up somewhere, because I think it's absolutely a wonderful tool. It's all about, we have this beautiful spirituality that all of this is based upon. But if we don't take the right action and live it, none of it works. It sounds good. Yeah, that sounds great. I love that. Oh, I got so inspired. And then we forget about it. We're really urging each one of us to use it in life. It works. It works. Prove it to yourself. So remember, my dear friends, that as we stand, that spirit, the universal good, the love, the infinite intelligence, God itself, stands ready to support us in everything that we do. Everything that we do. In Revelations, and this is what I'm going to close with, in Revelations it says, Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in to him and will sup with him, and he with me. So we just need truly, if we want, to open ourselves up to receive, to be on the receiving end of life. I know many people that they live their lives giving to others, to their family, to their kids, to everyone else, because they don't feel worthy enough to receive it for themselves. So by asking this specific question, you, each and every one of us, me too, I'm in the you with you, all of us can live a life on purpose instead of allowing life to simply happen to us. And doing that one thing opens us up to receive. And that's what I have for you today. And so it is.